in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome into another edition of the program. So we have a great show lined up for you today, and we have Mr. John Pugliano here with us. He is with Investable Wealth LLC and runs his own podcast and is just also an author. So of course an all-around knowledgeable guy to talk about, of course, things like automation and just kind of future-proofing yourself, because things are changing. Technology is changing the landscape of the workplace in the future, and it's just something that we should probably talk about more often. So happy to have him on, and it's going to be a lot of fun talking to him. So in the meantime, everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. And one thing that I never remember to mention anymore is that, well, actually yesterday, but the biggest news here at Computer America is that just last Friday and starting yesterday, you can now find Computer America on iHeartRadio. That's right. Just go to iHeartRadio, search Computer America, and up we pop up with all of our past shows as well. So very happy to have that, and check us out, iHeartRadio, or as iHeart.com. So with, and let's see, anything else to mention? Of course, computeramerica.com. It will have everything, including show notes, as well as links to any of today's topics and our guest websites. So if you are driving, if you are working or doing anything else important, well, we have you covered. Head on over to our website and you can find our guest website right there. So let's see, we have our contest still going on. We will have a winner announced tomorrow. And yeah, that's brought to you by Logitech. And the last thing is, of course, the live video stream, where you can watch Computer America and not just listen to it. Just one more way to experience the show. Okay, now with all of that out of the way, why don't we go ahead and jump over to our first guest. And again, really looking forward to this one, because this is something that we have companies on that talk about their products, they talk about their gadgets, but it's very much in the here and now. And that's great. That is what you want to hear about when, 99% of the time you want to hear about what's happening now. But technology is also about what is going to happen in the future. What is technology going to do to our lives, really, in the near future? So to help us explore that, talk about that, and get into that is our guest. So welcome onto the program, Mr. John Pugliano. So John, thank you so much.
Hey Ben, a pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, and like I said, it's this is going to be a lot of fun, because we're going to try to keep the the hype and that kind of thing, because when a lot of people talk about the future and what could possibly happen, people tend to speak in hyperbole. No one's going to have a job, no one's going to be driving, and humans are going to be wiped out by Terminators. Like, it's always very hyperbolic. So I'm hoping that you can bring, obviously as an author and as a host of your own podcast, you bring a lot of, research and knowledge to this conversation. But let's start with, John, a little bit about you. What's your background? What do you do for a day job? And, what do you have going? Who is John Pugliano?
Sure. Well, as far as my day job, I'm the money manager at my own private investment firm, investablewealth.com. And as you mentioned, I do host my own podcast where I talk about what I'm doing in the marketplace. It's not something where I give advice. It's more of kind of like a journal of what I do. This is how I built my wealth. These are the trends I see. This is what I'm buying. I leave it up to people to make up their own minds as to what they want to do. And that really takes us into the automation part. I got into this because I've spent my previous career was working in corporate America. I was industrial sales and marketing guy. So I've traveled literally around the U.S. and around the world in the last 25 years. The previous 25 years of me starting my own company, I was traveling either with the military or with large corporations, selling machinery and automation type equipment. And I've seen all these trends taking place, and I use those in my everyday trades, when I'm investing my money, my retirement money, and my client money. So all that kind of culminated into writing a book about what's going on with automation, because I don't believe the hype. I mean, hype is good for selling newspapers and getting clicks and things like that on websites, but people are either saying it's so great it's going to be Pollyanna, or on the other hand, it's going to be doomsday. And I try and be square in the middle, saying, well, it's going to be different. There's going to be a big impact. It is going to affect a lot of people, but it all, none of us can see the future, so it all depends on how quickly these things occur and at what rate. But it is here and now, and we're going to see it like never before.
Yeah, and it's certainly something that we talk about in the news every single day. But I think you're right. At the same time, it's certainly that it's coming, but I think there's this desire by news organizations, ourselves included, that we just want something to say, look at the end of this 100-year-old industry. Look at the rapid changing of this emerging technology. Like, trying to say it's here and it's here already, or it's going to be here in the next year, I think clouds a lot of the conversation that we can have. So again, glad that you can join us. So why don't we talk about and I think a lot of this is going to center around automation and and how it's going to affect everyday lives. But why don't we quickly do an overview of your book? Because as an author, The Robots Are Coming, A Human Survival Guide to Profiting in the Age of Automation, sounds like pretty much what we're going to be talking about today. You mentioned that you see this in your everyday life, but how was writing the book? I mean, how's the reception been to Robots Are Coming?
It's been great. It's out for a couple months now. Maybe not quite that long. Maybe about 4-6 weeks. It's available Amazon, Kindle. It's printed. It's Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores. You can get it just about anywhere, and it's doing really well. And it's hitting two different segments. One is the more techno people like us and like the people who listen to your program, and then also really hitting the people that are just interested in careers, and both young and old, people that are entering the job market, maybe the millennials in their 20s, as well as people that are 40, 50, and they're a little worried about getting replaced by a robot. So it has good acceptance.
All right. So our first question: are you predicting robots will eliminate all human jobs and create a zombie apocalypse? Because really, that is kind of the promise of the future of automation. There will be no more jobs, and like we're not even hearing about easy jobs. Like there will be no more cashiers or things like that. There will be no more hedge fund managers. There will be no more CEOs of companies. There will be no more really automation and this thing called machine learning, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. It's not just low-wage jobs, but a lot of jobs that we didn't consider were, kind of on the chopping block all of a sudden. What have you kind of found, or where do you think robots and automation is going to take the job market?
Sure, and you're right about all the headlines. Everybody from Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. All these smart billionaires are saying, "Hey, we need to start taxing computers or robots. We need to start thinking about minimum incomes, guaranteed minimum incomes, things like that." Last year at Davos, the World Economic Forum, that was their big thing about all these jobs are going to go away. There's going to be social unrest. What are we going to do? Well, again, I think there are a lot of smart people. They know that, and we are going to see problems. I'm 56 years old, so I've lived through a lot of these things already, and I've seen them firsthand. For example, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in the late 1960s, early 1970s. late 1970s, I saw the Rust Belt. I saw the guys that were 40, 50 years old. They lost their jobs in the steel mills or working in the coal mine or working in the assembly line, from Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all those states. They were drastically affected. Jobs went overseas. Those guys never got their jobs back. They certainly didn't get the high-paying union jobs and good benefits that they were getting by working in the steel mill. I think that same type revolution is coming again. This time it'll be different where it won't be localized. It's not just going to be the Rust Belt. It's not going to be just the East Coast or West Coast. It won't be just Houston shutting down because oil prices collapse. I do think that we're going to see it widespread, and it's going to hit occupations that people aren't expecting. And that's really what my book is about, because people are saying, oh, it's going to be hamburger flipping jobs, or it's going to be, low-skilled jobs, low-pay jobs. I don't think so. I actually think I do not think it's going to be an economic collapse. I do not think it's going to be a zombie apocalypse. But what I do think it's going to be is it's going to hit white-collar workers and professionals in a way that they're not expecting. So from attorneys to doctors to middle managers, school teachers, those kind of people, I think, are where robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, all these things are going to have a big impact. And, it's not going to be the hamburger flipping jobs because most of those low-skilled jobs have already been replaced anyways.
Right. And I definitely appreciate your optimism that this is not, not apocalyptic in your in what you see coming. But it's hard for, when you think about the types of jobs that are within the next 15 to 10 years, kind of able to be replaced, maybe not, cost effective to be replaced by companies or, necessarily, but not just able to be replaced, but probably should be replaced. Things like truck drivers, taxi drivers, cashiers. I mean, those are large portions of the population. I mean, where do you see those, like, whenever I had this conversation with Craig, it's one of those things that he said, well, just like back in the Industrial Revolution, new jobs came at the expense of old jobs. There were different jobs, and you didn't really bemoan the loss of all those jobs. I mean, where do you see all those, all those taxi drivers, truck drivers, cashiers? Do you see them being retrained, or do you see new positions that are just going to naturally fill in the gaps?
Well, I'm not optimistic in the fact that I don't think there will. I'm not optimistic saying that there won't be job loss, because I do. And again, like I mentioned, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these guys are calling for at least 30% unemployment or 30% job cuts from where we are now. So I tend to agree with them. I think, and I don't know how fast it's going to come in or when it's going to hit. But I guess what I'm a little bit optimistic on is I see a tug of war happening between the creative destruction of these new technologies coming in. While they will take away jobs, they will also, in my opinion, create deflation. And so, just as consumer electronics and computers have drastically, the price of them has been cut drastically in the last 30 years.
Absolutely.
The most expensive computer I ever bought was in 1987, right? I've never spent more for a computer system than I did in 1987, and it did nothing, right? It had a black and orange monochrome screen, dot matrix printer, and the thing was horrible. Didn't have internal storage.
Sounds like a beast of a machine.
Every year those things have got. Yeah, and in its day, it was amazing. I stayed up all night the first night I got it to play with it. But those technologies have changed and made things better. The prices come down. So yes, I think long-term taxi drivers, truck drivers, hamburger flippers, those are all going to be in danger. As well, again, as I say, white-collar people, middle managers, doctors, attorneys, a lot of them are going to lose their job. Will it be 30% or more? I'm not sure. Where I don't see the zombie apocalypse, though, is and this is more on a social scale of things, I think the deflationary pressures will make it affordable enough where there is going to be some type of a universal income or a basic minimum income.
Right.
And again, that's things like, Bill Gates, these guys are talking about that. I actually agree with that. As I run the numbers, I think that that's very likely over the long run, whether that's 20, 30, 40 years, Markets adjust. Humans are very adaptable, and we'll figure all this out. And it will be worse for some places than others. China, I think China's in trouble. China, Vietnam, Philippines, places where that have profited in the last 40 years because they had low quality, very inexpensive labor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, labor is going to become near free, just like knowledge and information has been free over the last 25 years. So when labor becomes near free, you no longer have a comparative advantage in China. And so I'm optimistic for North America, where we have a lot of energy between Alaska, Canada, continental U.S., and Mexico. We really have amazing reserves of natural gas and oil, and with near free labor in the form of additive printing or subtractive type printing methods, you're going to see a lot of these factories coming back to America. I don't agree with Donald Trump in the fact that it's going to be making America great again from bringing jobs back, because the jobs that come back are going to be dark factories where robots are doing the work. But that will be so efficient that it will create, I think, enough bounty that we'll be able to compensate those that are unemployed. The point of my book, though, is for those people that don't want to be unemployed, the people that want to be entrepreneurs, or the people that do want to stay employed, because while I don't think we're going to have a social collapse, I don't think there's going to be people starving in the streets, not in America anyways. I don't want to be one of those people that's unemployed and living that life, because if you look at the history of our inner cities and other places, not a great lifestyle. People really need to work, and I think they'll be very fulfilled from the work if they do it.
Right. If they don't have something that they can dig into 40 hours a week or whatever whatever it is that they feel they need to, then you are one of the basest consumers, and you just you go day to day thinking, what do I want? The one piece of the puzzle that you're adding here that I hadn't thought about was the very fact that with automation, you're going to lower the cost of living, pretty much across the board. So when you think of like a universal basic income, and you think, what, now we have to pay everyone minimum wage or whatever it may be to do nothing, it's like, no, you're probably going to have to pay less than that, because everyone's going to live more cheaply. It's not going to be as expensive. You're not going to be floating infinite salaries just because. So that's one part that I had not considered.
It is very it is very cost effective to provide people with the basics. With abundant energy that it looks like we have now for some time in the future, we have virtual reality entertainment. Mm-hmm. We have plenty of high calorie, fructose type agriculture. I'm not saying you want to eat that food and that is good for you, but it's cheap, right? It's easy. Right. It's easy, as the Romans used to do, to provide bread in circuses, right? They've gotten less and less expensive because of technology, and I think on a basic level, people will be kept alive, but not necessarily the life I want to lead.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that you bring up people like Elon Musk, and they have said that with the rise of automation and these kinds of things, that it's not really about the end of industries. It's not really about getting people unemployed and making wealth for only the top select, but it's more about freeing people up, because we've never been in this situation before where we didn't have to work 40 hours a week to have everyone's needs met. So it frees people up, and I think this gets into your next point about entrepreneurship. And if you don't have to work 40 hours a week, if you don't have to provide for your family by driving a truck across state lines, for 80 hours a week, you can take that time and put it to something else that maybe is not as easy to automate, or, it's just plain creative. Things that people would say, you want to be an artist? Well, there's no need for artists. No one will ever pay you to be an artist. But now we find ourselves in a situation where, maybe pursuing, creative style occupations is probably going to be the most valuable thing, because everything else, we have our bases covered. So what type of entrepreneurship are you looking for in the future? Are you looking for, again, obviously a lot of industries are not going to be open to, a new medical practice or things like that. What kind of entrepreneurship are you a fan of, and what role does it have to play in this future that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think the automation part is going to be fascinating. In fact, my book's broken up into 4 sections, and one entire section is just about entrepreneurship. And I have it kind of under the title of one of the ways you have to, I think, beat the robots is to change the way you think. And so one of the sections of the book is about stop thinking like an employee and think like an entrepreneur. And, part of that reason is if you're going to lose your job, well, you're not going to have a job anyway, so you're not going to be an employee. So entrepreneurship may be thrust upon you. But the other reason is that, again, because of deflation, because of all these amazing technologies that are going to be available to us, just as the personal computer, just as the printer, all the apps and technology that we have, that's only going to get better with artificial intelligence and with robotics. And so it's going to really reduce the barriers to entry to getting into doing things. If you want to have your own, I don't think manufacturing jobs are necessarily going to go away. And in fact, if you look at the United States, in every year that we've ever recorded job growth, we have had increased manufacturing output in the United States. The only years we haven't is during a recession. If there's a recession, we have a slight dip in manufacturing output. But other than recessions, every year the U.S. manufactures and produces more than it made the year before. The difference is that manufacturing jobs have stagnated long ago. So we're still making things. We're just not using as many people to make them. As I see more of these jobs coming back to the U.S. or more of the manufacturing coming back to the U.S., that will create more opportunities for entrepreneurs that want to make custom things. We can all go down to Costco or Walmart or Amazon or whatever and buy something that's off the shelf. But I think with these, and whether it be 3D printing's got a lot of hype, so I hate to say 3D printing, but whatever type of new manufacturing technique it is, right? Just general CNC machining and additive and subtractive, different types of manufacturing methods that have all gone computerized. You can literally either have that in your home or in a small home shop where you couldn't have had that money. You couldn't have afforded the factory before, but now you can own at least a part of that manufacturing to customize things in your own home or in your own small shop. A lathe that's run by a computer, any of these items, you could have never had that 10, 20 years ago. You're going to be able to get that in the future, and so we're going to be able to really customize things. And even if we're shopping globally, buying something off of in bulk off of Alibaba, and it is coming in from Vietnam, when it gets to you, the entrepreneur, you can add value. Whether it's a software app or whether it's some type of tweak that you've done to that base product that the big guy manufactured the big thing, but you're somehow customizing it for your local neighborhood or whatever the market is that you're selling it to. That's where the real opportunity is going to come in, and it all comes down to that creativity. Think about a 3D printer, and then think about Leonardo da Vinci owning a 3D printer, right? That's the difference. It's that part that the human brings to it that's going to make amazing things.
Yeah, it's not about just having the tools. Obviously factories all over the world are going to have those, but it's about how you apply them and how you transition that, because obviously, painters all over the world had access to paint, but we only remember a select few because they could do things that no one else thought to, or they could do them at a better quality than a lot of others could. So that's absolutely true.
Absolutely.
And just to kind of back you up in that, I don't want to say that 3D printing and things like this, they are technologies that are overhyped. I mean, these are technologies that really have changed manufacturing in the in like the 80s and 90s. They were paying millions of dollars for these giant machines to do additive and subtractive manufacturing. Only recently, only now are we getting down to the to $100 to $500. So like it's changed. It's just now it's finally making its way into the home. So that's why it's so hyped up, is that it's already made its impact. It's just going to make even more of an impact because hey, why go to Nordstrom's and buy their shoes when you could have obviously a more sophisticated one than just plastic, but a 3D printer print shoes exactly for your feet. It's little things like that are obviously going to
and
come.
it's really these.
Go ahead.
And the losers are going to be these large institutions that have been around for 100 or more years that have relied on the old methods. So and the technology is already here. We don't even have to wait for the newer things. You mentioned like the artists. We remember Michelangelo and Leonardo and those guys because they were the craftsmen. Everybody had paint, but it was just those guys that had the inspiration and the creativity to make something out of it. Mm-hmm. You look at a guy like Steven Spielberg. Okay, look at Steven Spielberg. He got rejected from numerous film schools back in the 70s when he was trying to. It was a young guy trying to make films. I think it was, I forget if it was University of California at which location it was, but one of the big film schools, and others had rejected him. Today, if you were Steven Spielberg, would you even waste your time going to school? I mean, why would you even go to school? Why wouldn't you create your content and put it out on a platform like YouTube, create your own channel? If you're really good, if you're really Steven Spielberg, you're going to draw an audience. People are going to watch you. That's going to create funding and advertising, and just as you do with your podcast, right? You don't need when your dad started this, he needed an AM radio station. You don't need that anymore. And so it's these institutions that are going to get hurt. And again, that's why I think the individual entrepreneur is going to have great opportunities.
I don't get much chance to talk about obviously the change in radio. Computer America's been on the air for 26 years now. But, over that 26 years with, the internet, like we saw it coming, but we didn't think it would displace it this much. And, radio, it's finding its own avenues. And, you could probably talk about this a little better than I could. But institutions, they're trying to pivot themselves to take advantage of new technology. But at the same time, it feels like, just like you said, people, individuals, or even companies that take advantage of the more agile readily available business models. You don't have to go through radio to have an audience bigger than radio. And it's do you see institutions trying to either ward them off, fight them off, or are we seeing a trend towards embracing and trying to emulate success in a new way?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I do think you do see them trying. Like, a lot of universities are doing the courses online and things like that. But just as the newspapers though tried to go online, you look at how many newspapers there were 30 years ago and how many profitable ones there are today. There's not many. Yeah. So I think even when they try to adapt, they're going to get hurt just because of all the overhead they have, right? And it's everything. It's government. I mean, with things like cryptocurrency, if you get down to the granularity part of it, why would you really need a Treasury Department or a Federal Reserve? If you don't need someone setting the price of money if you really do have a global currency that's a cryptocurrency. So they're not going to give up power easily. I don't expect that. I think there's going to be obviously a lot of roadblocks they're going to put up. But these technologies, Oscar Wilde or whoever said it, there's no stopping an idea whose time has come. That's where I think we're coming with this type of technology. And, again, when I talk about automation or robots, I don't mean just the physical mechanical arm of a robot. It's the apps. It's the artificial intelligence. It's the Bitcoin or whatever, whatever the next technology. Everybody's so enamored with Bitcoin right now. I keep saying, it didn't exist 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. We have no idea what's going to exist 7 years from now. So I'm not saying that you run out and buy Bitcoin, but these type technologies are going to continue to change and revolutionize, and I think they are going to hurt the institutions. Again, like I said, if you're Steven Spielberg, why would you even go to art school? You just hone your craft and go direct on YouTube. Same way with a lot of the diagnostic type careers, doctors, auto mechanics, attorneys. The guys that are diagnosing things, the doctor that's going to check to see if you have strep throat, or the mechanic that's going to see if you're I was going to say carburetor, and there have been carburetors for a long time. The mechanic that's checking your fuel injection, or the attorney that's looking at old case law to find a precedence. That's all diagnostic. Mm-hmm. Well, with decision support systems and cloud computing and big data, we have all those. We know all those things we don't need the individual human to go out and check the engine, because we can just plug it in and the computer is going to tell us with all the sensors and the technology that we have what's wrong. Or same thing with a doctor. You're not going to need. You're going to have a smartphone device that tells you whether you have strep throat. You're not going to have to go to the doctor's office.
Right. And John, I'm going to stop you right there. Music, I know that you can hear it, but music means we have to take a break. We'll come right back. And John, if you don't mind staying over, we'll give this a proper send-off. So, everyone, John Pugliano, we'll be right back.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here with John Pugliano. He is with, of course, Wealthsteading, and he has his own podcast. He writes books, and from what I can gather already, just a very knowledgeable guy on automation in the future. And I think, John, now would be a good time to kind of start setting timelines, because to say that this is coming, to say that it's right around the corner or this will happen, I don't think that's very helpful to a lot of people. Just that's just one more thing to keep us up at night and lose some sleep, and that's terrible. But why don't we talk about there we go. So yeah, why don't we talk about where automation trends are heading, and along with that, kind of what timelines that you're kind of working with, because we've heard some as catastrophic as within 5-10 years every taxi driver and truck driver in America is going to lose their jobs to self-driving cars. But where what time scale and what trends are going to hit us first?
Sure, and I think the self-driving cars might even be a little bit 10 years plus in the future. I personally drive a Subaru Outback. It's got what they call EyeSight. It's their driver assist, and it's revolutionary. I mean, I can get on the interstate and not do anything for 4 hours, and it just goes. So, I mean, a lot of that's here now, but it's still a matter of implementing it and figuring out, the insurance, who's going to be responsible if there's an accident, what happens when it snows and ice. And so that's, I don't know. I mean, that might be a little ways in the future, but the other things are here now. If you're a first-year law student, just either in law school or just getting out of law school, you already see these effects. They are not hiring new attorneys to go out and do the old casework and the studies that they used to, because it's all artificial intelligence now. They've got that stuff handled. So if you're an attorney, you're already seeing it. If you're someone like Starbucks, a barista, there are robotic baristas out there now. Starbucks hasn't implemented them yet. There's a company in California that has, at least one that I know of. I think it's Cafe X, and the projections I've looked at, I think Starbucks could eliminate probably 60% of the baristas if they go to a robot. It's anything that's repetitive. So anything that's repetitive and predictable, obviously a robot can do it better than a human. So, making a good cup of coffee is nothing new. We've been doing it for 1,000 years, whatever it is, 800 years. A robot can be programmed to do that better. A artificial intelligence can search legal cases better than a human, and because it never forgets them. Same thing with diagnosis of people that are doctors, or even complicated things. Heart surgery is very complicated, but it's also very predictable. And so there are companies like Da Vinci is one of the medical companies out there. They're not doing things as complicated as say heart surgery directly, but there are automated Johnson & Johnson. It took it off the market, but it was out there for a couple of years. It had basically an automated anesthesiologist. It basically took it off the market because no doctors wanted to promote it because anesthesiologists, they don't want to give up their $400,000 a year jobs, and so they kind of put up roadblocks to it. But think about anesthesiology. It is very predictable. And it isn't like you're just going to plug into a machine and walk away. You will have a human there in case something does go wrong, in case the power goes out or whatever. But these very predictable, very routine jobs, whether they're high professional jobs or whether they're baristas, they're in danger, and they are going away now.
One of my favorite examples that we bring up on the show often is with IBM, Watson. I mean, Watson is such a crazy form of technology, and of course you can also throw Google's DeepMind, DeepThink, whatever it is, into the same boat. And it's, you would think that, you think, oh, well, what's repetitive, and you go immediately to baristas or what have you. But repetitive can also be looking at scans, X-rays, CAT scans, what have you, and searching for signs of cancer. And Watson is doing that currently, as well as doctors now, and in the near future, as it gets more medical records, will probably do it better than any single doctor ever. So when you say repetitive, it's not just baristas, it's cancer research. It's even complicated repetitive things.
Yes, and also with the lower cost of sensors and monitoring equipment, we have Fitbit and Apple Watches and things like that, but they're going to get even cheaper and more effective. So, if you are someone with heart disease, you won't have to go see your cardiologist all the time because you either have a monitor or some kind of implant that's already monitoring your system. It's putting it into big data. It knows what patterns to watch for. It's going to be able to diagnose that, adjust your medicine, whatever. Same thing with just even, and again, these things there are many medical devices that are available now. They just haven't been approved by the FDA. But, there are things you can plug into your smartphone that kind of like a breathalyzer, to tell you what the alcohol content is. It can tell you other things. It can tell you, what your likelihood for a particular disease may be, or it can tell you whether you have strep throat, or there's a little device that's trying to get approval now where a parent can look into their kid's ear and send that image to the doctor, and they can determine whether the kid has an ear infection. So, I mean, it's these trips to the emergency room, the trips to the doctor's office. We won't need those. And again, the good news is that lowers the cost of health care, which we drastically need.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not all gloom and doom, but it is going to affect people. And again, the message of my book is that for those people that want to be entrepreneurial, though, they can use these same skills that they have with their creativity to find new markets. And, listeners to Computer America, they're savvy people. They know about computers. Maybe they know how to write code. Think of the things that they can do once these barriers to entry start coming down. How can they profit from that? Maybe, the whole thing with medicine, I think that if we keep having the same barriers to medicine and healthcare that we do in the United States, things like medical tourism are going to get even bigger. They're big now, but they're going to get even bigger.
Yeah.
So, maybe you write an app for figuring out where the best place is to go get a hip transplant, or where to go get plastic surgery.
The next Airbnb.
So the people that can be those.
Yeah.
Exactly. The middlemen never go away. They just shift, right? They just change using technology to be more efficient. And that's where I think really the listeners of the show can think about, where can I take this? How can I make money? Because again, the beauty of it is, there's 7 billion people on the planet. You don't need 1 billion of them to make a living. You can, you with your radio show, me with my podcast, my practice, I don't need to reach millions of people. I can make a very good living just, in my niche and my expertise. And you could have never done that before. In the old days, direct mail, telephone books, yellow pages, all those things were very expensive to get your message out.
Oh, it was a very shotgun.
Very inexpensive.
Yeah, it was a very shotgun approach. You reached the largest net of people to find those who were interested, and you were putting your name, your business, your everything in front of, let's face it, 90% of the people you were in front of, they couldn't give two darns about you. But now, it's very easy to drill down and target just the people who, that you would be a good fit for. So it's certainly something like that.
And even let me give you a quick example if we still have time for my book. I kind of go through their different thought experiments. I talk about things about the automated cars, and I think even in fact that will promote eventually other jobs, because you really won't need storefronts anymore because a lot of that will be mobile. But in any case, think about this. I in knowing my practice and knowing the high net income earners that I serve, I thought about who do I know that makes the most amount of money for the least effort. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings out there, but I got to tell you that orthodontists, it's been my experience that orthodontists make a lot of money and don't work real hard. Okay, just a little observation on my part.
Okay.
They have a lot of ladies in their office that do all the work, but they don't have to work so hard themselves. So I thought about it. I said, well, how will technology affect an orthodontist? And these guys are knocking down $400,000 to, I know guys bring in $1 million a year putting braces on kids' teeth. So I said, well, could you scan your teeth? You could easily scan the way your position your teeth are now. You know what's optimum for your mouth. Could you not print, just have a 3D printer or some type of manufacturing where you could print various little retainers that would take you from where your teeth are to where you want your teeth to be? And I said, well, yeah, I think you could do that. I did a thought experiment. Then I went online and I Googled it. And there was actually, and I was surprised, but there's actually a guy, and I don't remember if it was Stanford or MIT, but there was a graduate student, and it's in the book. You can see the reference if people are interested. There's a guy that did exactly what I just said. It was like $65 of material cost. He took existing hardware on a 3D printer, and he took the stereo scanning equipment that he had, and he's an MIT guy or something, right? So he had the equipment available,
right.
But it's all off the shelf. He was able to actually straighten his own teeth by printing out these little retainers and wearing them over a period of months.
Yeah,
so think about that. I mean, even an orthodontist could be affected by this. And I think that's where people just use their creativity and look at the tools at hand and say, okay, no one's thinking about using a 3D printer to make braces. That's what I'm going to do.
Right. No, that is, obviously a very good one, but I think at the same time, it's one that it's going to be more difficult. That, obviously there's room for more than one person in an entire industry. Obviously there's going to be more than one person doing that, but you essentially just described Invisalign, which does almost exactly the same thing. And, they already have a huge company and they're already advertising on TV. They print out these little clear plastic things. They're probably not as automated as you're talking about, but it's going to get there. So it's going to be more than just coming up with the idea. It's going to be about how to run a business. We see this with, and I don't know your thoughts on places like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Or GoFundMe. I think it's a huge mixed bag of nuts, as in they're all nuts. But it's one of those things that, it takes more than just someone with a good idea. It takes someone with, a business sense of some sort, right?
Absolutely. You have to have a skill set. And, when I see things on Kickstarter and that, sometimes I order things just for fun. It's like Las Vegas money. I never think I'm really going to get it because they rarely ever pan out. I recently ordered something that was so simple. I mean, it's basically just like a belt, and it's taken, 9 months. They still haven't figured out how to make it yet. The idea isn't good enough. And even with the idea, Steve Jobs didn't really invent a lot of things, right? I mean, he didn't invent the smartphone. He didn't invent the MP3 player. He didn't invent the personal computer, but he took what somebody else had already made and he made it better, or he made it somehow, at least people think it was better.
Right.
So it is all about that business and marketing plan. And actually in my book, I'm kind of glad you brought that up. In my book, what I do at the end of every chapter, I have a little thing that I call action plans. And, if you can just read through the book and blow through it, it doesn't matter. But if you really want to kind of put yourself in these thought experiments and think about what you can personally do, you work through those little exercises. And they're broad-based because I'm writing for, obviously a wide audience.
Right.
But that kind of thinking and those kind of simple questions are the things that I've used in my life, to set myself up in business and to do the things I do. And it's taking your thoughts and putting them into actions. How do I define my business plan? If you want to make $200,000, there's different ways you can do it, right? You can have a very small kind of concierge business like I have, where you could have 100 clients and charge them all $2,000, or you can have 1,000 clients and charge them $200. And either way, you're going to get $200,000 income. So you need to see what your market size is and what you want to do with it, and run those numbers, and take that thought and put it into action. Again, though, I mean, shoot, the software's free. Think of Google Documents. You don't need to go out and even buy a spreadsheet, right? Google Documents is there for free. You can use Google Sheets and Linux software. All that stuff is free now. You can use the internet to connect with your market. Social media. I mean, think of the ways you can take your message out through social media that you could have never done before. And but it is about taking action. People have to get off their duffs and go do it.
Yeah, it's certainly that thing. And going way back to the beginning of our conversation, the incentive to sit on your duff is certainly going to be there when you are unemployed and willing. There is a universal basic income, or mandatory minimum wage, or however it is that you word it. There's going to be that incentive to just be a very basic consumer, where you get your VR entertainment, you get your cheap food, and you get your housing and that kind of thing, and medical care, and you live your life. But there is going to be the opportunity to, if you want to, I think, better the situation you're in, it's going to take the creative mind, not just the hard worker, not just someone willing to, throw out their back by the age of 40, but it's going to take a creative mind more than it is, that work ethic. So, of course, work ethic, good.
All about creativity.
Right. So why don't we talk about, some of the, here in these questions, you have something about, working from home. How is it going to be realistic or possible for people to work from home? And, kind of in my mind, I think a lot of people's offices in the near future, in the next couple of years, from home is going to be the next at work. It's just kind of one of the perks of technology is the ability to put yourself in other places, virtually, and you don't have to physically go there. So, how do you see kind of, working from home in the future?
Yeah, I think that is the biggest growth area. And in fact, again, people that are looking for some entrepreneurial things to do, if they can figure out how to help other people transition into that home workspace, I think that's really a viable way to do it. And obviously, people have been telemarketing and things, or telecommuting for years. But I just know in my own business, I've worked exclusively from home now for a number of years. And again, this is something I could have never done. I have a small practice. It's not, a big Wall Street practice, but just with the simplest of computers and a internet connection, I can trade $20 million worth of stocks or assets with a click of a mouse button, and I have all that data, all that research, everything from home. My job is a little different than others, but it's still there. And again, it gets back to someone that's in the medical industry. Not all doctors are going to become employed, but they may not be going to a big hospital every day or to a big network of office buildings. They may be able to do their consultations and things through Skype. Again, right now it depends what state you're in. Some of that is still not permitted because of regulation, but doctors used to, in the old days, make house calls. I think they'll do that again, but it'll be done through monitors and Skype, things like that, and that will be for numerous professions. I know a lot of IT guys, security, IT people they're working remotely or working from home. I think the technology is definitely there now, and people should be looking towards that, and also thinking about what the implications are. I mean, look at the retail stores that are currently shutting down now because of Amazon. You have places like JCPenney's, Sears. Those type stores are shutting down their storefronts, and so you have all this retail space coming on the market. That's not good for real estate. If you have people working from home, then you don't need all the office space. If you have autonomous cars, you have less people driving into the city, then you don't need all the parking spaces and the parking garages. I mean, this has real investment implications for things like, real estate or for other types of commodities that people think, historically, and this kind of gets into another part of my book, is about investments. How is technology going to affect investments going forward? Maybe those old things that we thought about that were recession-proof, like real estate or like gold or other commodities, maybe that's not going to be the case in the future.
Right. It can certainly happen because, what we find valuable, here in the near future, it's not even so much gold and things like that, or, even, who really cares about gold when you have access to the internet, which has 1 billion movies. I mean, what people, I think what they kind of prioritize is going to shift as well. So, even like you said, traditional safe investments, they will not be as much. And very, very good point about the real estate. I think that they're going to have to find new ways to turn land into, places of entertainment, because malls and things like that, they're shutting down across the country. I mean, I think it was like a week or two ago, they had some very dire numbers of malls across America closing down because people just aren't going there anymore. People are having everything delivered. They're shopping online. Who cares about a physical place that you can go and shop if you can just order it online? And turning those spaces into something of value, that would probably have a huge, a huge portion of people very interested because, hey, what else are you going to do with all these large buildings? So very, very good point.
Yeah, I think those malls are going to be converted into residential real estate. I think they're going to make condos out of them or something, nursing homes for older people, things like that, because they're just not going to be needed for shopping.
But they're in good locations.
For the naysayers, too, that say, we've been through this before. That's kind of Luddite thinking. This technology is not going to change that fast. Look what's happened to the price of oil and to the status of an organization like OPEC, just over the last 3 years. When I was a kid, and I was probably 12 years older or something when the oil embargo went through in 1973, 74, when OPEC first flexed their muscle. For these past 50 years, they have had a really stranglehold on energy in the United States. That's all gone away now. The United States from 2005 until now has more than doubled their production of domestic oil. We're exporting it now. Depends, how you track the numbers, but we're anywhere from number 1 to number 2 in nations for producing oil. And, just 7 or 8 years ago, people would have said it's peak oil. Oil is going to go to, oil was $140 a barrel in 2008. Today it's $45 a barrel, and that's despite OPEC trying to restrain production.
Yeah,
it's not working, and it's all because of technology. It's because of renewables. It's because of wind energy. It's because of solar energy. It's because of electric cars. It's because of horizontal drilling. It's because of fracking. It's because of big data, where we know where the oil is and how easy to get it. We can drill oil wells. In the old days, ExxonMobil would go out and invest billions of dollars and spend a decade to get oil. Today, we can, with horizontal drilling, we can spend millions of dollars and be up and running in weeks or months instead of decades. That has drastically lowered the price of oil. If that's going to happen, those deflationary pressures, I think, are going to happen everywhere. And again, it's going to be bad for some people, but I'm pretty darn happy that gas is inexpensive as it is.
Right. And it's you brought up Bitcoin earlier, as if we weren't talking about enough complicated things. Throwing things like Bitcoin in there. I mean, Bitcoin is a great example of a technology that, probably the initial technology is a little overhyped. Obviously Bitcoin has had its share of ups and downs. It's lost, 50% of its value overnight sometimes. But the technology behind it, the blockchain, it's a technology that is going to work with many, many more. Bitcoin is just one of many cryptocurrencies at this point, but the blockchain is going to affect everything from how people vote to how people manage money to, everything else along the line. I mean, do you see kind of automation affecting things like investing? Because obviously computers are going to be very good at taking in a lot of data and predicting what's going to happen next, which is exactly what investors do. And these technologies, they're very predictable. Bitcoin is very predictable in the blockchain. So how do you see automation affecting investments?
Yeah, so investment, I think we obviously have robo-investors, and so all that's here now. And again, that's a field that is taking some jobs of some old school money manager kind of people. But the thing about investing is, like with all computing, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you have a bad algorithm, it doesn't matter how fast you can compute, you're just going to make things worse. And the unique part about the investing side is that markets only work when you have people on either side of the trade. So if everybody's doing the exact same algorithm for trading, then you don't have anybody taking the other side of the trade. So right. I think directly with investing, we'll see a lot of efficiencies come in because of things like blockchain. I mean, this is hard to believe, and you probably have never thought about this because you're not in the industry, but do you know it still takes 3 days for a stock trade to clear? So if I sold Apple stock today we're doing this on a Thursday, it wouldn't clear until Monday or Tuesday, even though I put the order in today, right? I mean, the money can go instantaneously. That seems...
Yeah, and just real quick, I mean, that seems so counterintuitive to technology, because we hear about, robo traders that operate on the millisecond, and you're telling me days are still happening?
Yep. So if you could execute the trade now and you get it for the price of, whenever you sold it at the market, but in terms of that money actually leaving your account and going to the other account, it takes 3 days to clear a trade. And so institutions like the Bank of International Settlement in Switzerland, I mean, these people, they're either going to have to change with things like blockchain and become much more efficient, or they're not going to survive because someone else is going to come in and do it. And the little games that people play is these big brokerage companies. If you say you take your money out of XYZ brokerage company, if you live in California, they'll mail you the check from their office in New York, so that it takes 3 days to get to you before you cash it, so they can keep the difference. Right. But if you lived in New York, they'd mail you the check from their office in San Francisco. I mean, that's how they play games with these little things. So, I mean, that's the arbitrage, right? But things like and I'm not a big believer in Bitcoin itself, because I do think it's been overhyped, particularly at the prices it's at now. I think they're extreme. Not to say, I mean, there are only 21 million of them going to be around. I can see the path to where it could make you millions. Okay, I can see that, but I can equally see the other path where it could be worthless, because, like I said, 8 years ago it didn't exist. Right. We don't know what's going to come, and what's to stop Walmart or Amazon or the Vatican Bank from coming up with their own type of cryptocurrency, which has no fee at all? I mean, right now we use blockchain in the currency form by, buying Bitcoin. I'm buying Bitcoin for, say, $2,500, and I get the Bitcoin, and then I could do whatever transactions with it. But why couldn't Amazon, who is going to pay Visa 3% to do your transaction, to move money around, why couldn't Amazon just create their own blockchain cryptocurrency that is frictionless? It has no fees associated with it, or very, very little, because Amazon has a huge computer system anyways, and they can run all that. You could keep your money in whatever the Amazon coin would be called.
90 seconds.
It wouldn't have any cost to you at all. You wouldn't, it's kind of hard to explain on radio, but you wouldn't have to buy it for $2,500. You could just give them your money and it would exchange that way. You take Visa, MasterCard, all those guys out of it.
Right. And John, that is, I think, a good place to leave the conversation. Obviously, there's more to talk about, but music means that we are out of time. So, hey, John, if people want to find out more about your podcast, your book, where can they go?
The book is called The Robots Are Coming. You can find that anywhere.
60 seconds.
As far as me, Wealthsteading is my podcast, the Wealthsteading Podcast, wealthsteading.com. Google me, you'll find it, then get in touch with me there.
All right, very well said. So everyone, computeramerica.com, we have a link to everything that we talked about here today. And yeah, go check that out. So John, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Ben, I appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
It was a lot of fun. So, and we'll definitely have you back here soon. So, everyone, we're just out of time here on Computer America. Thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to catch us tomorrow with Mr. Ralph Bond. That's right, from Autodesk. And yeah, we'll have another great show then. So until then, everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Ten seconds.